It's 1982, and it's the first fucking week of winter.
It's alive! It's alive!
We all go a little mad sometimes.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Here's Johnny!
What's your favorite scary movie?
To play a game.
I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
You're killing people. No, I'm killing boys.
Hey everyone, I'm Carly, and welcome to Boo You Horror, a horror analysis show where I'm endeavoring to help you try and understand how and why you feel scared watching horror movies, and why these genre films deserve the respect that the film critic community absolutely refuses to give them. It's Halloween, so we're of course talking about John Carpenter's The Thing. Sorry if you were expecting Halloween. Frankly, The Thing is a better movie and more apt to this moment in history, and even more so, massively underrated in the grand scheme of cinema history. So when I examine horror, I like to think about Soviet Russia. And I know that sounds weird, and I'm not talking about the political paradigm, and I'm not even talking about the early 2000s if-then joke. I'm talking about the acronym CCCP. And I know in Cyrillic that's actually pronounced SSSR, but just roll with me for the sake of the acronym. CCCP. Context, contrast, collateral, and presentation. So what does that mean? It means we should look at the time the film was made in. What contrasting motifs are being used to prove the message? What do we, as a viewer, put on the line to receive the message, and is that worth it? And finally, the craftsmanship. Was it ultimately successful? So let's dig right in. If you haven't seen John Carpenter's The Thing, right now is a great time to pause the video and go check it out. Did you watch it? Good. And now that the Dora the Explorer part of the program is over, let's talk about the world that The Thing debuted into. 1982, United States of America. E.T. will come out as the highest grossing film of the year against some major heavy hitters like Blade Runner, Tron, Wrath of Khan, and Fast Times at Ridgemont High. The neon escapism would do its best to try and keep away the horrors of the world. The U.S. is still reeling from impacts of its involvement in the Vietnam War, as well as adding more military strife into the Middle East as it decides to become involved in the conflict resulting from Israel invading Lebanon. Again. We also continue to allow our own citizens to die at the hands of the continuously ignored AIDS epidemic. And when the world was this dark, people were ready to see people get along with glitter and glam at the theater, which is one major reason that The Thing was a big old box office flop. Now, when we look at The Thing, we have to realize it's an adaptation, so we should look at the context of its source work too to get an even better understanding. That being the 1938 novella Who Goes There by John W. Campbell, and the 1951 RKO production The Thing from Another World. Guess what, y'all? It's a straight line. Today's episode should be brought to you by the letter C, communism. More accurately, it should be brought to you by the letter M, for McCarthyism. For the uninitiated, McCarthyism was a government-mandated movement that sought to detect and persecute left-leaning individuals via a full-scale witch hunt, including the mobilization of the FBI for anyone who had done so much as looked at the word communism without visible disdain. This movement would result in imprisonments and blacklisting, which devastated the lives of thousands, a large number of which who weren't, in fact, even communists. This era would be known as the Red Scare, or the Second Red Scare, for the second time we decided to try it out. McCarthyism also disproportionately affected the entertainment industry. So after this era, there is a wave of artists using McCarthyism as their villain, but usually it's shrouded in metaphor. Enter the two film adaptations of The Thing. In both, we see a group of isolated men being faced with the task of rooting out who is the enemy among them hiding in plain sight. In the Howard Hawks version, it's a plant monster. But in the 1980s, we raised the stakes to the thing being a fleshy, organic shapeshifter, a predator, unmatched, dripping, and you guessed it, the brightest red goo you can find.
We're going to see this a lot in the 80s. The 80s Hollywood era seems to be massively obsessed with this perfect predator. And now we understand the world that we're in, let's talk about what we're contrasting. We're going to play with three main motifs here. It's going to be us versus them, power versus powerless, and the seemingly basic hot versus cold.
We constantly see throughout the film the thread of foreign and familiar. Even as we start from the dog's view in the first frame, we as an audience are immediately pitted against the helicopter. This also allows for Carpenter to immediately align us with the dog rather than the assailing Norwegians. He has us comfortably sitting in the skin of the thing before we even know to be afraid of it. The us versus them is going to be illustrated time and time again. We see it in the chess machine. We see it in the computer simulations. We very evidently see it when actively fighting the thing. Most notably, we see it in the Keystone scene with the blood test, where one moment, the men sit terrified and filled with malice against MacReady. But the second they're proven innocent, they stand up to align themselves with him, holding the gun next to him as allies. It beautifully illustrates how quickly human nature fluctuates in a snap decision when pushed to its extinctual limit. This scene also entangles beautifully with the theme of power versus powerless. MacReady wields the threat of violence almost constantly during the film, whether it's dynamite to blow up the whole station or a glass of whiskey to electrocute an opponent who didn't let him win. MacReady is framed as our hero, but he's not a good guy. As Childs reveals during the blood test scene, he's a murderer. MacReady is always willing to do whatever it takes, literally scorched earth, to get what he believes is right. Which leads us to hot and cold. The film takes place in Antarctica, the coldest place on Earth. And the most impactful and effective way of killing the thing is, of course, blazing fire. This is a group of calculated and competent scientists. It goes against the usual conceit that horror is based around, that is people making bad decisions. They're extremely rational for the circumstances, and yet the only thing that can stop the thing from attacking them is chaos embodied. This contrast is also evident in the film's color story. Inside the facility, our perceived safety is warm. It's lit warmly. The outside is frigid, lit in vivid blues, with the exception of the flare and flames left in the aftermaths of the men's battles. These are literal beacons of hope smoldering in the snow. Even down to the last scene, where MacReady has seemingly defeated the enemy with fire, he knows he and Childs will ultimately die to the cold, an inevitability that was laid out for them in the very first act.
So now that we understand the contrasts, let's talk about Collateral. What are we putting on the line here? And the name of the game for this film is body horror.
Famously, Carpenter said he wanted to avoid making a movie about a man in a suit. So he tasked 22-year-old Rob Bottin with creating an amorphous, horrific monster whose identity we should never truly know. It had to be the perfect copy, but also had to play with the destruction of humanity and familiarity that would push us so far past the uncanny valley into pulsing viscera that would reform into something recognizable again. This is a movie that commits what many consider to be the cardinal sin. It flays the adorable husky alive, turning it inside out into a new, unimaginable creature. It pushes us to see faces melt, chests burst, arms ripped off, decapitated heads ambulating on their own.
In short, it's pretty fucking gross.
But the film doesn't push its audience to sit in a moment that's viscerally relatable or obscenely vile. Frankly, it gets to a point where it becomes so ultra-violent that it loses any sense of humanity at all, which arguably is the point. We watch a friend become a lump of KY jelly-soaked chunks and then reform into a foe. It's an echo of its former self, a husk, no matter how accurate the replica.
So now we're at presentation. Is John Carpenter's The Thing successful? Ultimately, yes. The movie is terrifying on 50 different levels.
It comes at you with existential dread, with disgusting gore. It manages to present it all in beautifully shot frames and a stunningly simple, perfect score. Those 3 words really encapsulate The Thing. Stunning, simple, perfect. It's an ensemble piece, but it doesn't lose itself in the minutiae while also not relying on caricature to develop audience sympathy. It has a limited color palette, and it's beautifully captured through anamorphic lenses that create an otherworldly feel out of bleak buildings and brisk, blank snow. This elliptical lens allows for a wider view also while distorting light, throwing lens flares that J.J. Abrams could only dream about. The script uses a bookend-style framing device that really hammers home the cyclical nature of all things and the inevitability of our fate if we refuse to try and understand that which we do not know.
Look, she's bleak. I won't lie, but so's The Godfather, and AFI won't shut the fuck up about that. So that brings us to the end of our video. I hope you have a better understanding of this little underrated masterpiece. And if you like what you saw, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button, as well as follow the socials in the channel listed below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you after the next movie night. Bye.